Okay, so we're going to talk about React today, and so I'm starting the recording now. So here's some sample code that I generated as I was preparing for today. And this shows, a basic React app all in a single file, an HTML file right there, everything in one file. So I could take that thing and let's do this. So we've been looking at this MAP, this MAP application that we generated using Express, what was it called? Express Generator, I think. And I'm gonna, let's see, how big do I need that? That's all right there. So I want to make a folder. Let's make a folder called React, just for our React experiments. And let's look at that one example file. So I just created a file, index.html, right there. That's it. I'm going to open that with my browser. Make sure I have the JavaScript console open. I'll reload that. I still want the caching to just check that. What the heck? Console settings. So there it is. There's the hi. And so this is a line where we import the React system. You can see right there. The file name is react.js. And this is called a CDN. See, CDN, that's a content delivery network, CDN. So, the internet being a global thing, there's people from all around the world, users around the world that may be hitting your site. And if you've got a lot of traffic, then it pays to distribute your servers into other countries, so that when users go to load your pages, they don't have to travel as far to get them. So we get better response times, less bandwidth issues. So that's accomplished using Content Delivery Network. Anyway, I don't want to get into too much detail there, but these libraries are made available for free through these content delivery networks. And I don't understand the business model for that. How could they make these free? Why would they be doing this? I don't know exactly why, but they are available for free. And then you've got another JavaScript file that you load here, and that's react-dom. And this is that part of their system which is used to interact with the web page. React by itself is, like their core classes. And React DOM gives some extra functionality that's used for inserting, going from the React system and interfacing with the web page. This is the document object model. That's what DOM means. It just means the web page viewed as an object, meaning an object is something that has state, it can be manipulated through its behaviors. In other words, calling functions. Those are called behaviors. So the DOM is another, you could think of, when you see the word DOM, you should just simply think of web page with a JavaScript API. The DOM gives you, the web page provides access to your JavaScript, so you can interact with the web page as if it was a language object, a JavaScript object. That's DOM. It just means web page, basically. And then the third thing that we're importing here, Babel, and this is to support something called JSX. So I think I made a note of that. This is, well, I don't mention JSX, but I'm using JSX here. You can use React without it, but seems to be React with JSX seems to be pushed a lot, and I just go along with it. Does seem to be convenient to me. I've done it both ways, and the JSX approach seems to be better documented. It's the approach that's being pushed, so I think it may be a better choice. So what JSX is, it's a language that's not JavaScript, but so what it for that language to be work in the browser, it has to be translated to JavaScript, and then the browser can run it. So that's what this does. This library here converts the JSX syntax into pure JavaScript syntax so that the browser can handle it. So look at this. That's the head section. That's where we load those 3 libraries. And now we've got the body section, and then we've got this root. So, you know, what React does is it writes components into the web page. It writes material into the web page, and it needs a starting point. So this is the root. They call it the root, the React root, the root node. That will be the starting. That's the terminology they tend to use in their documentation. I thought I would stick with that, at least for the time being. So anyway, all we really need to do is have a div with an ID set to something that we can refer to later. And then this ID becomes a container. See, this is an empty div. So our React system down here, what we do in React is basically we're going to fill in the empty container. We're going to fill in the empty div. See that there's the contents right between those two starting and ending text. There's nothing in there. So we're going to be putting things in there. That's what this does. That's what React does. It inserts elements. It modifies the elements that are in the web page. Modifies the web page. Modifies the start tag, end tag, the elements. Those things are called elements. This is called an element. This is a div element right there. See, this is a head element. The head element has sub elements. Here's a script element. See, this is the start tag of that script element. Here's the end tag of that script element. All right, so this is the start tag and the end tag taken together is the whole element. And an element may have children, such as the head. So that's how that works. So we have an empty element here that functions as a container that our app code is going to fill in. So now look, here's the script. Here's the script element where we have the React code. And notice the type. This is key. The type is not text/JavaScript. That's the default. See up here, this is type. This is type text/JavaScript. See why is it text/? What the heck is that? There's some top level categories. There's audio, video, text, and a couple of other categories. So these top level categories. Oh, application is not. So you've got these top level categories, and then you've got the kind of like the file type, the type of file basically the data type of the file. So it's going to be a JavaScript file. But this is the default. So if you don't specify type, the browser assumes JavaScript. So we're going to just leave those out of there. But here we don't want the browser to try to, execute this. It can't do it because look right here. Look at that line right there. That's not valid JavaScript. That's JSX. Okay. This is valid JavaScript. That's good. That's valid JavaScript. This is JavaScript. No problem. This is JavaScript. All of it. Oh, this is invalid JavaScript right there. This is invalid JavaScript right here. But that's instead of. But this is JSX syntax, so it allows us Instead of, if we could write this code in JavaScript, but it would be larger, a little harder to read, perhaps. But that's a matter of opinion. So anyway, that's, if we took this type out, or if we made that JavaScript, the thing would fail. Right? It would give us a syntax error. So let's see here. Now this line here, this one line there, you can sort of ignore that for now. It's optional. If we take that out, I'm just going to take that out. Okay, so we just have that line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines that you really need to look at. So this line here, it defines a class called app. And this class extends React.component. So React.component comes from here. It's defined in that library there that we loaded. That's why we can extend it. And so we extend it, and then we specify constructor using this syntax. We use the word constructor. And by the way, normally these, I'll leave it out for now. So the constructor has a call to the super class, the constructor of the super class. That's this one. And that's all it does. And then we have a render method. And this is kind of like an override. We need to implement the render method for this app. By the way, this app class, which is extending React.component, it's a React component. So it's an instance of React component, a subclass of a React component. All these React components must have a render method. So that's the main thing we define as a render method. There's other methods we can overload as well, but this is the main one. When it says render, it's like, okay, it's like React is saying, okay, app, I got an instance of the app, and I'm supposed to paste it into this container, say that one, this is an example. I'm supposed to paste this app instance into that container. Well, what do I do? Well, I call render, and render returns a React, what do they call it? It returns a React element and inserts it into that container. That's why we're returning this. See? And this is an instance. This actually, you see the lowercase d here? The case is very important. The lowercase d is needed because this is a built-in class. By the way, this is not the HTML div element that it looks like an HTML div element, but this is JSX syntax we're looking at now. So this is actually an instance of React's div class. So React has a class for all of the different types of HTML elements. So it has a class for div, it has a class for, paragraph, h1, form, input, all the tags. It has its own implementation of those things. So this, when this line appears here, it means I want a React div element created with the contents high, and that's what app renders it to. That's all it does. So this defines the class, the app class, and here is where we render it into the document. And you'll see we have the render method of React.dom, of React.dom rather. React.dom, that comes from, that render method that's in the React.dom class comes from this component here that's loaded. So most of the time we'll be using material from this library here. And just occasionally you'll have to use something from React.dom, just the starter code just to get things running. So we got this render method. We're saying, okay, React, render this for me. Well, you got to tell React two things. Well, what is it that you want to render? You got to pass in a React element here. And then you got to pass in the location in the container, the location in the DOM, the location in the web page where you want to insert the results of rendering that element. And so that's why we set the ID to root. So we could change the root name to something else, like container, well, then we'd have to call that container. So this is just a location to render this element, React element. And when this thing runs, when this appears in here, it's actually creating an instance of this app class. So when this line runs, when this code runs right here, it creates an instance of this app class. In other words, it runs the constructor, right? It runs the constructor. And then that, after the constructor runs, we get an instance of the app class. Then this React.dom method ends up calling render on that instance that it gets, on that app instance. And then it inserts it into, this root element here. Let's see if this runs. Let's see how that runs. So I'm going to open that. I think I did this already, right? Already got it over here. So here it is. Now, normally the convention, you'll normally see people do something like this. And what does that do? Well, that wraps everything, all of this code that we just executed by itself. We now make it into the body of a function. See the opening brace, the closing brace? Okay, now this thing is a function. There it is. So we define the function. Oh, it's an anonymous function, by the way. I'm going to, see, I highlighted that exactly. Do you see where I stopped the highlight? I'm including the brace, but not the parenthesis. So what I have highlighted there exactly is the definition of a function. It doesn't have a name, right? It's anonymous. It's called an anonymous function. It has no name. Well, what do we do with this anonymous function? Well, this code, this syntax that I have highlighted right now, when this thing is evaluated by the browser, when it's processed, when it's run, this thing, this is what I've got highlighted here, it evaluates to a reference to the function. Okay? This becomes, it's the function, a reference to the function that got created. What do we do with that reference? Well, look at the reference. The reference is inside these two parentheses, right? And then we just turn around and what does that do? It does what? It runs the function, right? That's how you run a function. You give the name of the function or a reference to the function, and you have the parentheses to call it. That's it. That's the syntax for running a function. So the reason that people do that is because this app here, if we didn't do that, app goes into the global namespace. And so when we put it inside this function, this anonymous function that just calls itself right away, it doesn't call itself, but we call it, and then it keeps that app identifier out of the global namespace because it gives it function scope now. It just helps to keep your codes clear. You don't want to pollute the global namespace with new identifiers. So that is just a trick that people use. Okay. Any questions on that? How that works? No. All right, so now I'll look at this is the history of my experimentation, roughly. I mean, I cleaned it up a bit. What about multiple files? Well, normally we don't work in a single file, right? Here, look, that's a single file right there. Well, you can imagine this code is going to get pretty big. It's going to get messy. And we want to sort of simplify things a bit. Hi, Eric. And so I'm going to show you how to split this up into main.js. Sorry, not main.js. I'm going to split this up into index.html and app.jsx. So let's do it. Let's go ahead and split this up. So I'll need the script element here. And then we're going to put in the source attribute will be, say, app.jsx. Now this won't run because this this code that we're going to drop in there is JSX code. So we have to give it that type attribute. So we have to say type equals text slash Babel. And there it is. Now this is going to be taken out. Let's do it like this. I'm not going to copy this to app.jsx. I'm just going to strip all that off. There it is. Delete 4 characters. And there it is. Now we have the same code. It's just stored separately in its own file. So we don't need this anymore. So we're going to put that in there.
I've seen a lot of times you put the script JavaScript things actually in the body.
Yeah, this is. I think we got to put it in there.
At the bottom of the body.
Yeah.
So that they load, so that they don't get cached, and
Yeah.
the page loads before the scripts do.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm taking this out. It's at the bottom. It's at the bottom. So, see, for this script, when this script runs, it's going to refer to this root element. So the root element needs to exist first. So we're going to load the script after this root element here is defined. Now if we load this thing, it's referring to HTML HTTP request. What the heck is going on there? Anyway, but see, it's complaining about this crossed origin request. So once your HTML file, when you got the main file here, and it's trying to load this script, remember this file is being loaded from the file system. And the browser is very paranoid about you loading stuff from the file system. And at this point here in processing of this web page, the browser is going to want to go into the file system and get this file and execute the code. And the browser says, no, that's too risky, I'm not going to do it. So that's what this is about. It's complaining about the security, the security protocol. So it can't do it. You've got to go through a web server in order to load this script from the same location that you get the HTML file from. So here it is. We've got those two files. We need to load them through. We can't load them directly from the file system. We're going to load them through a web server. So let's create a web server. I'm going to call it main.js. And I got the code here. So I'll have to spend time doing that. There it is. We'll use Express. Get the Express library, instantiate Express, and we refer to it as app. And then we register a single middleware. It's the static middleware. It's built into Express. And here we're saying, hey, just serve, give access to the current folder and all subfolders. And then let's listen to port 3000. So there it is. So let's run that. And now if we go to port 3000 on the local host, oops, I didn't want to do that. I already had it open. I just had to reload it. What the heck? This isn't working? Am I still going through the browser?
You're loading it from your, you're loading the file.
Oh, for the file system.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I did it.
That's why I gave you that.
Yeah, thank you.
Error.
I gotta have you here, Eric. You're gonna make things go faster for me here. Keep your eyeball on it. All right, so there it is. So now we're retrieving the HTML file from localhost, and we're turning around and getting the JSX file from the localhost as well. So both files are coming from the same origin, the same origin policy. That's what it wants. A browser likes to load things from the same origin. It doesn't like to be told to go to some other location and get files from there, get data from there, get script from there. It gets paranoid, and then you got to deal with somehow, if you need to do that in your app, you need to add course headers and configure the server to send certain headers and all that. So, huh? Nginx. Yeah, they handle that kind of stuff. You got to dig into it. We're not going to get into it now because it's going to take us off on a tangent. So there it is. We split. We can't, three files weren't quite good enough because, well, we couldn't run the system without the web server running. So we had to create a web server just to look at stuff. Right? All right, so we got that going. Now I wanted to show about how to build components and the basic idea behind a component. And then I wanted to show a little bit about Ajax. And here's a little file here. It gives the price, the current price of Bitcoin in US dollars. I thought it was pretty interesting. I found that last night and just banged that out. And I guess we can get into this. Eric, is there something you want to say before I dive into this next? Want to talk about your system a little bit before I dive into this?
Sure. Let me write the number down for it. I've got over the weekend I built a little mailing list application really quick because I actually need it for a client. But I figured I'd just open source it and use it kind of as an example for you guys. It uses a bunch of different technologies that makes it real time. This is the source code for it right here. I have it running on my laptop here. I'll show you guys how to use it so you can see how it works. Do you mind if I hook my computer up?
No, go ahead. Ready? HDMI?